Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Immigration Spotlight, an initiative of the Latin American and Caribbean Committee of the Loreto community. Immigration Spotlight is a bi-monthly opportunity to explore emerging issues and deepen our understanding on issues related to immigration, detention centers, the border crisis, farm workers, asylum seekers, refugees, and the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we also get to hear from people who are working on immigration justice. So today we are thrilled to have with us Dulce Garcia. She is someone who's presented in the past. So we welcome her again. Welcome, Dulce. It's great to have you here. Let me just, by way of background, just give a few bio remarks about Dulce. And what I thought we would do is just hear a little bit about your personal narrative, about the work on DACA, and any updates since we spoke about a year and 3 months ago. So a lot has happened. And then we know that you're also doing work at the border. So we'd love to hear about that. So let me just give some background notes about Dulce. Dulce is the executive director of Border Angels, a humanitarian aid organization at the US-Mexico border. She's an attorney and a dreamer, and she's one of some dreamers who sued the Trump administration after the termination of DACA in September 2017. As a result of those efforts, hundreds of thousands of DACA recipients were able to renew their DACA status. She's also from the Logan Heights community, and has attended San Diego City College. She'll tell us a little bit more about her personal narrative. She transferred to University of California, San Diego, where she received her bachelor's degree in political science and a law degree from Cleveland Marshall College of Law, where she concentrated on civil litigation. So we welcome Dulce. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you for joining the LACC again. And let's start with just a little bit of your personal narrative that you're so open about, and then your process and how that led you into the activism work that you're doing today.
Yes, thank you. I do think it's important for us to tell our stories because we have gained so much momentum from telling our stories. We've been able to build power and community behind this movement to push for a path for citizenship for decades now. And it's because of our power in the voices that we have. So thank you for this space. First of all, thank you again for having me and give an update on what's happening. But just for folks that were not around for the first talk, I want to clarify DACA is not a path to citizenship. So even though I have been part of my community here in San Diego for over 33 years, I do not have a way for me to become a legal permanent resident. I am not a US citizen. Thanks to DACA, I'm able to pay onto the system and contribute to the various in various ways, including the Social Security system, without being able to have access to it. So I'm not a citizen. I look forward to the day where I can sit in a jury box. And I know many people try to get away from jury duty, but as a lawyer, it's something that I hope I get to do one day and cast my vote at an election someday. So, being part of my community for over 33 years, I've fallen in love with San Diego, and I fell in love with San Diego as a child. Even though here in California, specifically when I was in school, undocumented, I was hearing all of the hateful rhetoric, particularly during Prop 187, when they were trying to kick all undocumented students out of school. I wasn't really grasping the entire concept of what it meant to be undocumented, but to an extent I knew that I was different, and I would deny not having citizenship, and I would say, yeah, I was born here, I'm from here, because I felt like I was already from here. And as a child, not understanding what all of these labels meant, I did understand hate and rhetoric, and I understand that words like illegal immigrant, welfare child, all of these attacks in our community felt very much harmful. Luckily, the Supreme Court protected us with fire and said all students, whether they are undocumented or not, every child deserves a right to education. And so I was allowed to stay in school. And I didn't really know what it meant to be undocumented. And in high school, when I had been accepted to a few universities, and as a teenager thinking my biggest problem in the world is figuring out whether to follow my friends to a particular school or go to the school that I really liked, that had cows and everybody was on a bike, and the environment was so much friendlier and different. And I thought that was the biggest worry I had. And I went to my school counselor asking for advice, and he very bluntly said, "You're undocumented." He said it actually with worse terms, saying, you're an illegal immigrant, you're not even going to go to community college across the street. And that kind of shocked me in that moment, and it angered me, because this person was already saying that I was limited. And in my mind, my mom had told me, I could dream big, and so in my mind I was out to conquer the world. And that here, this counselor that was telling me that as an illegal immigrant, I wasn't going to be able to go to school anymore. So I just stormed out of there, and I said, "You watch me." And then I went to talk to my mom, and she confirmed my biggest fears. She said, "I'm really proud of the work you've done to get these acceptance letters." And we were crying together because we were really proud at that moment, and at the same time heartbroken, because my mom told me, you're not going to be able to afford school. Being undocumented means we don't have a social security number. The number that we've been using this whole time has only been a tax ID number, which means you can't, we can't pay for your school, you can't continue. And she was just heartbroken as a mother, not being able to say, let's figure out how to pay for college. So I declined the offers to schools, and enrolled in community college that summer. And since then, I've had, it's been obstacle after obstacle. To be undocumented means that even saving $1 is incredibly difficult, because you're likely getting paid less than what the market dictates, and very often less than minimum wage, right? And falling to abuse that oftentimes is unreported, because you're afraid that they might turn you over to ICE, or sometimes even the employer may threaten you to say, well, I'm going to turn ICE on you, I'm going to turn you over, and you're going to get deported. And it happens in our community very often. My story is just one of 11 million of us that are here in this country, including my own parents, that often fall prey to employment abuses. And earning enough just to put bread on the table is difficult, but then on top of that, adding all of the other things that you've really wanted to do to meet your vision of your dream, it's incredibly difficult. So in California, things have changed, where there's the California Dream Act in place now that offers some financial assistance to undocumented students. And that has been a huge accomplishment by our community, because in other states like Georgia, they won't even allow to enroll students that are undocumented, much less so have any ways to afford university. So, working various jobs, as you mentioned earlier, allowed for me to pay for community college. Eventually I transferred to UC San Diego and then law school. And here I am still today. I have my law firm. I am the executive director of a nonprofit, Border Angels, of which has become a dream job. But I'm still undocumented, still without a path to citizenship. And no matter how savvy I get at practicing immigration law, I still can't fix my own papers. And it's heartbreaking that I can't help a lot of people that have been part of my community for so long as well, including my own parents. So here we are still today in this fight for a path to citizenship. So much has happened, the good things and bad things, as a result of us creating this movement. We were able to win DACA in 2012. DACA is very limited. So just to go over very briefly over the guidelines, you have to have been in the US before reaching the age of 16. When the program was announced in 2012, you needed to be under the age of 31. So it was capped and it was limited. It left my older sibling out of this DACA protection. So it protected my younger brother and myself, but it left my oldest brother out of this. So he hasn't received any type of protection, even when DACA was announced, even though we came at the same exact time under the same exact circumstances. He was just a couple years older than me, still a child, and was left out of this. So our views of what it means to be undocumented, even in our own family, has been very different, because for him, he hasn't had DACA protections in the last 3 years, where I have been able to navigate that and have a little bit more of security, especially during the prior Trump administration. Another requirement for DACA is there is a component for education, and you need to either be in high school or enrolled or have graduated from high school or been successfully discharged from the military. Have continuously resided in the US since June 15, 2007. So the idea that when DACA was created in 2012, it was going to bring an influx and mass migration of children into the US, that's not accurate, because one of the requirements was you had to have been already in the US June 15, 2007. So 5 years before it was even announced, those folks would be protected. But if somebody came in June 16, 2007, 2008, 2009, all of those children were left out of the program as well. So even if they came here before reaching the age of 16, if they came here in 2008, they're not protected by DACA. So it is very limited, it's very restricted. Although over 800,000 people have applied to DACA, it left so many folks out of this program. Another requirement is there's also a criminal carve out. So if you've been convicted of a felony or a significant misdemeanor, or 3 or more smaller crimes, like smaller misdemeanors, you're out of the program as well. So it is very limiting. It didn't protect the 11 million people. It didn't protect everyone that we wanted to get protection for. So this was really just a compromise back in 2012. People were getting arrested, young students without any protection from deportation were chaining themselves to government offices to win DACA. So this was a compromise, and it always was. We just became a little bit distracted, I think, when we received DACA, and then all of a sudden started to buy homes, get credit cards, get cars, continue our education, build businesses. Because of DACA, there's numerous reports about how we've been able to contribute in the billions of dollars for our economy, because for the first time, we had a piece of paper that allowed us to get a social security number, that allowed us to get driver's licenses, to apply for credit loans, to be able to build on our dreams. And without DACA, without having even a social security number, or without being able to say you're not going to be deported and you're going to be here around to pay your loans, like that has been a life changer for over 800,000 of us. I can't even begin to describe what it means to be undocumented, especially at the border when we have the presence of ICE and Border Patrol. It's like overlooking over our shoulders every single day, hoping that today's not the day we get caught, especially when we have anti-immigrant rhetoric around us, empowered like it was with the prior administration and the border increasingly militarized. It's this constant anxiety. It's a mental toll to think today might be the day that I get deported, or my mom gets caught, or what if I go to this place and I get and somebody hears me speak Spanish and they suspect that I'm undocumented. It really is tolling. And to have DACA, I remember the day I got it, it was just like this weight just lifted. And I cried when I got that DACA. And when I took it into the Social Security office, there was a gentleman who had all of these awards because he served honorably in the military, and he was working now at the Social Security office, and he helped me get the Social Security number. And he said, "Congratulations, I know you have been waiting for this moment for a long while." And I broke down in front of him because he was right. I had been waiting for that moment for so long. And I knew that at that moment, things were going to change. I was going to be able to get a driver's license. I was going to be able to travel even within the US. I felt like my world had just expanded. My what we call this golden cage, right? This cage of opportunity, and this area where it's been my home for so long, all of a sudden had opened up, and my golden cage grew a little bit bigger. I still can't travel freely abroad, but at that moment I felt free. And it wasn't a path to citizenship. No one was saying you're a US citizen now, but I felt a little bit more like part of the community. I felt even a little bit more welcomed. And so I think maybe that's why in 2012, when people started to apply for DACA and started to see these changes in their lives, we stopped advocating for a path to citizenship as much as we're doing today, or have been in the last few more recent years. After DACA was won, as you know, the Trump administration took away DACA on September 15, 2017. And we sued immediately, just a couple of days after our lawsuit was filed, I think September 18, 2017, or a few days after the rescission of the DACA program. Our lawsuit here in California was the first one that included DACA recipients. So 6 of us filed to protect DACA, because we couldn't imagine not having DACA in a world where the Trump administration was saying everyone that is undocumented should be afraid. When I asked the ICE director here in town, in him knowing that I'm an attorney, asking him whether he would deport me if my DACA expired and Congress didn't have a path to citizenship in place by then, he said, "Yeah, I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to have to deport you because those are the directives that are coming from the Trump administration." So that thought was terrifying. The idea that I had been practicing already law in court, in immigration court, and now having all of that taken away by this decision from the Trump administration was just terrifying. Not only my livelihood, but all the impact that it has on our entire community. There are over 23,000 DACA recipients that are, I'm sorry, 230,000 DACA recipients that are parents. So they have US citizen children now, that we have roots here in America. So it's mind-boggling that we're still having this conversation today. But, you know, Trump took DACA knowing all of these figures, all of these numbers, knowing that hundreds of thousands of people have already mixed status families here in the US. So we sued. We took our case all the way to the Supreme Court. The hearings were November 12th. And again, that was another big success, another huge win for us, just the idea of being represented by a DACA recipient, Luis Cortez, and us being also DACA recipients undocumented. It was an incredible show of power of our community and community building. There were hundreds of people outside, allies that were with us during this litigation process. So many different sectors have included support for the DACA program, from the educational sector to the business sector. You know, so many wealthy companies coming to offer support, like Google and Microsoft and Facebook, and all of these companies, high-tech companies that have DACA recipients working for them and stepped up for their employees. So that was really beautiful to see the community come together to support DACA recipients. And the day we were at the Supreme Court, there were hundreds of people chanting in this rally, and you could hear it from the bathrooms inside of the Supreme Court. I remember my friend being a little nervous from being there. And I said, you know, let's go to the bathroom. Let's go to the bathroom to you know, just get some of this anxiety out. And he went to the men's bathroom. I went to the women's bathroom, and I could hear the chanting from outside, and the windows were shaking a little. And as I was splashing water, I got this moment of extreme pride of knowing that there was so much support because of all the work that had been occurring for decades. All of these people that were chaining themselves to congressional desks to win DACA, all of these people that were still out there chanting, undocumented, unafraid, undocumented, unafraid. And it was just a beautiful moment for me to know that, that there was a community that had been built. And when I came out of the bathroom, my friend met me right outside, and I'm like, hey, did you hear that? And he goes, yes. And we're so excited. And that really got us pumped and motivated to go into the Supreme Court, knowing that there was such a beautiful moment happening also right outside on the steps of the Supreme Court. So we went into the hearing. That was November 12th, 2020. We didn't get a decision until June 2021. So leading up to June, it was, oh my gosh, it was so tiring, so emotionally tolling, so exhausting, because they would tell us, you know, the decision can come down today, and if not this other day, and if not this other day. And so from November to June, it was just a waiting game. And every morning, you know, and oftentimes we would have like in between calls in our movement, in our coalition with lawyers and other folks in the movement, and we would be preparing for the decision. And in case it's bad, it's, you know, we'll do this. In case it's good, we'll do that. And every day, getting ready to respond to whatever the decision might be, and knowing that our livelihoods depended so much on this decision. And at that time, when we would hear about Ruth Bader Ginsburg being sick or going to the hospital or something, oh my gosh, our hearts would just stop because we were like, oh my goodness, we're waiting for a decision. What is going to happen? What if something happens? And then another, you know, we lose that ally, because we were counting on her to protect us. And luckily, the Supreme Court got it right again this time in June 18, 2021. And we were just so overwhelmed and so happy. And it was one of those moments where I believe it. I want to believe it, but it's like, pinch me because I'm not sure if this is happening, you know, because it was a relief to know that we were going to be protected. That although so many people want to see us deported, want to kick us out of this country, keep telling me that I'm not welcome here, keep telling me that I don't belong here. This was assurance. This was, you know, there was again something in writing in black and white, very clearly saying the DACA program is going to be protected, at least for now. So that was a relief, but we knew it wasn't over. We knew it wasn't over, and we knew that other folks that want to see us deported were going to continue with our efforts, and they did. They continued with their litigation in Texas, and our legal team, made up over 100 attorneys in this movement, have been fighting and strategizing and with us from the very beginning. But we knew that even with all of the support, it was still going to be ongoing. So sure enough, there was a ruling this year from Texas, from Judge Hannon's office, saying that, and seeing new arguments. So with the prior DACA case, our argument in defending DACA was the way that Trump took away DACA was unlawful. He didn't follow the Procedures Act, the Administrative Procedures Act. So the way that Trump took away the program that was in existence, the program that we relied so much for our livelihoods, that we relied on to put bread on the table, to exist here and contribute in this country, the way it was taken away was unlawful. So now with this Texas lawsuit, the question is, was the way the Obama administration brought upon DACA unlawful? So was the way that DACA created a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act? So our arguments that we made with the first case is actually now being used against us in a way here in this litigation to say, well, you know, Obama then shouldn't have created this program in the first place. It was an unlawful program. Obama did not have the authority to create this program. Of course, for those of us that are practicing lawyers, we know, you know, programs like this are lawful. The idea of any agency to have certain discretion to prosecute certain people, to use resources in a certain way, like all that has been happening from the very beginning. In the immigration realm, having discretion has always been around, really, and so this, all the DACA program did was make it easier for officers to know when to exercise that discretion. Otherwise, without any focus, you know, it, like right now, with the new directives coming from Biden, and if they're not specific, an officer might not know when to close administratively a case in immigration court, where to focus resources. So right now, the newest memos say, you know, priority is going to be for those that have that pose a security threat, for those folks that have very serious criminal history. We want to focus resources on the type of community to protect a certain type of community members, and then go after another type of group, right? In this case, they're focusing on terrorism, they're focusing on violent crimes, things like that. So that has always been around. So we know that this is the reason why Texas and other states that want to end the DACA program. It's not because Obama didn't follow procedural rules. It's because they want to see us deported. It's because they are anti-immigrant, and they don't come out and say that, but it's obvious, right? They don't have to employ resources in litigating this case. These cases are so expensive, so very expensive. And instead of using resources, especially during a pandemic, to provide to our community, we're using resources to deport those of us that have been around for so long in this country and feel like we belong here. So that's what's happening with the Texas case. The judge did state.
Let me just come in here and just, first of all, I want to affirm, your commitment and your honesty, and your being so frank about your situation. You've basically been taking us through an emotional roller coaster. And I apologize because I think that you are the one at the front of that roller coaster, maybe reliving some of this again. And we hear it in your voice and we can see it in your face, even talking about the fear that your mom can be deported or you can be deported. So, in many ways, you're telling us about moments where, you've been reaffirmed of your efforts and your faith in the system, while at the same time there are moments where your hopes were dashed, and you're feeling those lows of living the life of an undocumented person, and also just you're talking about your community because you're sort of carrying all of this concern for your community and on your shoulders. And we hear it not just as an individual, but as an advocate and as an attorney. So I just want to affirm that we're with you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we get into the more current situation of this effort by the Biden administration last month, and maybe you can unpack that a little bit for us. I just want to see if there are any questions on this first segment. If anyone has any questions, and Sally, if you can help me out in looking for anyone who wants to maybe comment or say anything.
Helen.
And I guess please, I just wanted... Please introduce yourself. Hi, Helen.
Sure. Helen Thorpe. And normally I live in Denver, Colorado, although I'm working temporarily on the East Coast right now. But I guess I just wanted to affirm what Rosa just said in terms of hearing all the different roles, Dulce, that you have, and knowing how incredibly, what a roller coaster everybody with DACA has been on as the program is, threatened, defended, might go away, stays. And it just underscores the need for a permanent solution and real systemic reform, not only for DACA recipients, but the whole families. So we are with you. I just wanted to echo that statement.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Maureen?
I just have a question that maybe you plan on addressing. There's a lot of families that I know here that have cases, and all of a sudden, since Biden's been in, it's like they're not happening. So maybe you were going to be talking about that. And folks are a little reluctant. I feel maybe they've been instructed not to say too much. And maybe that's my imagination, but maybe you could speak to that as well.
Thank you, Maureen. I think this is a good segue into this, bringing us up to date about what is really going on there. you can click on the link that, the news print has, and it's a document over 200 pages. I think it's more for your attorneys, people like you to look at and decipher, but if you can unpack that for us and let us know a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Also, Rosa.
Yes, Mary Jane.
Yeah. Before we run out of time, I mean, Dulce, just excellent saying, I mean, every one of us can feel the fear of what you talked about with the undocumented, but also to work into what's happening with asylum on the San Diego border. You know, I that's where you are, and some of us are here, and you know, we'd like to hear that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I thank you for all those comments. Thank you, Helen, for the comment about a path to citizenship. That is the solution. That is what's going to really solve this problem. Since we were able to win our case at the Supreme Court, we started to prepare people to file DACA applications, new DACA applications for people that were left out of the program when it was closed during the Trump administration. And so for months we collected all of the evidence to put one packet together. It takes quite a lot of time, because you're asking people to prove that for every single year that they've been in the U.S. to prove that they've been here. So it's quite an amount of work that goes into gathering all of this data. So for some high school students that were not able to apply when Trump was in office, there was hope for them, and they had been waiting for this. We're talking about 15, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds that were now applying for the very first time for DACA this year, and leading up to the order from Texas, you know, folks were filing these applications, coming up with $495, coming up with lawyer fees, that those that didn't have access in other parts of the U.S. to access nonprofits. And then when this order came out, the applications for the first-time DACA recipients, they're on hold. They're not getting their money back. They're not getting DACA approvals. They're not even getting a denial. They're just in limbo. And so we have thousands of applications. I think the amount was over $31 million just in fees that went to USCIS that are just there on hold. So it was really heartbreaking to have these conversations with these high school students to tell them, I'm sorry, we did all of this work. We submitted it months ago, but now with this new Texas order, your application is just going to sit there in an office at USCIS. So the Biden administration has been quite frustrating really this year, because from day one, they gave a beautiful statement about how they're going to protect DACA, but they didn't move forward with processing these applications in time so that the order, when it was brought down in July, to have all of those thousands of applications approved by then. They hired USCIS agents months after. And so now, yeah, they're processing renewals really quickly within weeks. And it was taking people months to get their DACA renewals approved. So people were actually losing their jobs because these permits were not coming quick enough. And that's because of that's because of this Biden administration not moving quickly enough to protect DACA recipients by even something as hiring USCIS agents to process these applications. So that's again to highlight what we need is the path to citizenship, so that people are not in this really frustrating state. Every 2 years we have to renew our permit. And those students, those high school students that submitted their application, their hopes are again put on hold. So what happened to me when I was in high school in 2020, in 2001, it's happening again in 2021 with these high school students that thought they were going to get DACA, and now they're being told their applications being pulled on hold. So right now, regarding the path to citizenship, there is a push to have the parliamentarian right now approve a plan within the budget reconciliation. That plan was turned down by the parliamentarian and said, this isn't really a budget issue. This sounds more like immigration reform, and rejected it. So then there was a plan B. And then there's a plan C because plan B was rejected. And this plan C does not offer a path to citizenship. It offers another DACA type of program where 11 million of us can get an ability to work, but it's not a path to citizenship. And that is not really a solution. It's great on the one hand because it's going to alleviate this fear of being deported. On the other hand, it's still going to keep us suppressed, and it's still going to not solve all of these issues that were wrong with the DACA program. So that Plan C has not been approved yet, but it's something that folks are pushing for the parliamentarian. The Biden administration has moved forward with putting on the Federal Register the DACA program. So a little bit more, it's really codifying the DACA program. And right now we're in the 60-day window to provide commentary. But that's not a path to citizenship. All it's doing is just offering another layer of protection on the DACA program so that it's more defensible in court, but it really doesn't guarantee that it's going to be successful in court anyways. So this fear that we're still in limbo, that we're still going to be in this place years from now, it's still very much there unless we actually get Congress to create a path to citizenship. That is the solution. So I very much appreciate Helen's comments. In regards to the what's happening here at the border, I will say this, the Trump administration created a lot of policies that were really inhumane with the purpose of deterring migration, with the purpose of not having asylum seekers come to our borders and ask for support. It's very dehumanizing, the treatment that asylum seekers have received. Unfortunately, those policies are still being felt today with the Biden administration. Still today, the border is closed to them. So with the pandemic, Trump very smartly closed the border and said only essential travel is going to be allowed. And this has been weaponized against migration because it said asylum seekers are not considered essential. They're not a reason to travel into the US. So now that the border is opening next month to visitors, to tourism, the border is still going to be closed to asylum seekers. So when Biden announced in February that it was going to end the MPP program, also known as Remain in Mexico program, that program has been around for almost 2 years, where the Trump administration was telling Spanish-speaking countries, if you come to our borders, you ask for asylum, you're going to stay in Mexico while your case is pending. So you'll be bussed in to go to court and then bussed back out to Tijuana. You're not going to be able to make your claim in the US. You're going to come back and forth across the border. And then with Title 42, the border is completely closed. So forget about it. You're not even going to be allowed in for court. So those cases have been pending. When Biden said, we're going to end MPP program, and he announced it in February, people started to camp outside at the port of entry, at the San Isidro Tijuana port of entry. And that's what this background is. It's of the encampment where there are 600 children, over 2,500, maybe even as much as 3,000 people in this space that have been waiting since February to be able to make their claim to asylum. And the 17 shelters that Border Angels supports, those are at max capacity. The US government is employing resources. When they capture people in Texas, they fly them to San Diego, and then they expel them to Tijuana. So there's one shelter that is receiving 100 expulsions every day into this shelter. And when the US expels people, they don't test them for COVID. Even if they're sick, no matter what signs they're showing of being sick, they'll deport them and they'll end up in these one of these 17 shelters. And there's one specifically that already has 1,200 migrants, hundreds of children in there, and every day receiving 100 people from the U.S. government expulsions. So we know that during this time, ACLU sued because of this enforcement, Title 42 enforcement. And during that litigation, there was a small window of opportunity that opened up for us to apply for people, 35 families all along the border per day, to be able to cross across the border and make their claim to asylum. So it was very small, very limited. And we filed for applications for almost 1,000 people with other organizations on the ground, Border Angels, Psicólogos Sin Fronteras, AFSC, Apala San Diego, and Borderline Crisis Center. We formed a coalition for humanitarian aid in that space because the big NGOs are absent. There's, the ACNUR, the UN, you name it, the big NGOs don't want anything to do with this space. So they're not supporting at all the encampment. And it's been the small church group, the small grassroots or organizations that are feeding these people clothing, supporting them, helping them in whatever ways we can. And so when the ACLU filed a lawsuit on Title 42 and this small window of opportunity opened, we were able to have close to 1,000 people cross to the US to make their claim. And that includes hundreds of children. So we were able to support families in this encampment, but as people were crossing, more were being displaced and arriving into Tijuana. So the encampment is still there today. And we keep urging the Biden administration to open the doors to them. Now that tourism is going to be allowed here in San Diego, they're going to open this space back up. They're going to open the PedWest entry, and these people are going to be forced out of there. They're going to be kicked out, violently displaced from this place. That's our biggest fear. And that's what they have been threatened with consistently. And now that there's a new administration in Tijuana with New Mexican governor and new local elected officials, they are saying they're making plans already to move these people into shelters. The problem is the 17 shelters that Border Angel supports are already at max capacity. And when we were allowed to cross people in this small window that I was talking about earlier, that closed August 31st because the Biden administration was saying, you know what, we're too busy at this port of entry. We can't take any more people. We're just saturated with work. We can't allow any people in anymore. But when we were able to cross people, they would show up with a negative COVID test in hand. That was one of the requirements. They went through an extreme vetting process, photographs, biometrics, all kinds of ways to verify whether this person had any criminal history. And once they were in the US, there was another nonprofit that was also doing testing again for COVID. So we know there are ways to process people in a safe way. Here in San Diego County, over 80% of residents have been vaccinated. So we know that there are things we can do to process people in a dignified way, in a humane way. It's just a matter of willing. And we testified to this in Congress. I personally testified to what I saw in the encampment in Tijuana. I was able to travel with DACA, with advanced parole. Finally, I stepped into Mexico after 33 years. And the first thing I saw in Mexico was this encampment. And so I testified in Congress to what I saw, all kinds of horrible injustices and inhumane treatment that I witnessed. And we submitted these testimonies to Congress, and nothing has come of it. These testimonies were from April, and all of that is still very true today. We talked to women that were facing the decision of sending their teenage boys across the border, across the desert alone. because they're afraid they're going to get killed in this space. And the border is closed to families. It's only opened for minors. So unaccompanied minors are allowed to go in. So we're creating this policy where the choices are for these mothers to send their children across alone or try to go through the desert as a family and risk dying, either freezing to death in the winter or dehydrating in the summer, or staying in the space that is not safe for them. We have numerous reports of attempted kidnappings, harassment, sometimes even harassment by their own local police. It's talk about tension and mental health. You know, this space is just, it's been an incredibly difficult to see all of these people still today, with hope that they are going to be able to make their claim, because they want to present themselves at the port of entry. They want to be heard. They want to go to court. They want an immigration judge to hear them out. They don't want to be crossing through the desert. But what choices are they given right now? So I hope that was, I know it's a lot, so thank you.
No, you're bringing it, because there is a lot, there is so much.
Excellent.
And the way you are, talking about the U.S. policies right now, it's a major violator of human rights. And so I think one of the questions that always comes up is, what can we do as individuals, as part of this community? What can the LACC do? What can the Loreto community do in terms of advocacy or servicing, donating, supporting all of this, even in providing documentation or testimony to be delivered to Congress? Some of us who work at the UN, myself, Sally, formally talking about, writing a shadow report for on the US to the UN Human Rights Council. So what, in the last 4 minutes, we want to leave 1 minute for a closing reflection that Maureen will provide. But yes, let us know.
Yes, so much you guys can help out with, from calling your congressional representatives and urging them to pressure the Biden administration to end Title 42. That has to happen. End Title 42 for asylum seekers, open the border for asylum seekers, stop the deportations. We saw those images that came from the Rio in Texas, still happening today, deporting people to Haiti, countries where they're facing danger. Please continue to push for a path to citizenship. So when you talk to your representatives and senators, push for a path to citizenship for not only DACA recipients, but for 11 million of us, including our parents that were essential workers during the pandemic, to support the organizations on the ground that are doing this work. Border Angels is not the only organization that is doing this work, but it's important that those of us that are on the ground every day with these people to receive the resources, because at the moment we're doing the work that, quite honestly, the US government should and the Mexican government should be undertaking, but it's taking us, local community, to do so. So support these organizations on the ground, stay informed. That's why I'm so appreciative of this space. Please, if you haven't signed up to our newsletter, that's one way, or visit our website. If you're on social media, follow us on social media. But if you want to visit www.borderangels.org and sign up to our newsletter to stay informed, that is crucial. And so that's why I'm even more appreciative of this space, because I know you're all invested in what's happening here at the border. So thank you.
Thanks, Dulce. I guess to push also, because I'm really nervous about Chaparral being, and the people, because I've been to the shelters in Tijuana. My son lives in Tijuana, and they're full. They're full. And there's still, what, 2,000 people in Chaparral. So anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your work, Dulce, and everyone at Border Angels.
Rosa, I'll just say very quickly,
Yes, go
my
ahead.
thoughts are, if there is ever a space at the UN where Dulce might be a speaker,
Wow.
Loretto would sponsor that.
Yes.
We need to be on the lookout for that.
Yes,
Dulce, is that something you'd be open to as a possibility?
Oh my goodness. My first thought when I arrived at the encampment was, where is the UN? Where are these NGOs? It was so breaking because at that moment, I quite honestly felt like I was alone. And this was back in March. And since then, we've been able to build a community with smaller nonprofits.
Right.
They don't have the resources.
Mm-hmm. That's where is the UN?
Yeah.
Well, we have our list of to-dos here in how we can support. Pushing to end Title 42, push for opening the borders, stopping the deportation, advocate for that, advocate for a path to citizenship for the 11 million and their families who were essential workers, especially during COVID. Stay informed and continue to support wonderful advocates like yourself and your organization. We record these sessions for a purpose to disseminate and to continue the ripple effect in supporting everything you do. So we're so grateful on behalf of the Latin American Caribbean Committee and the Loretto community. We're thankful to you. And we want to close now with Maureen, who will give us a reflection.
Before we do that, please, I have one quick announcement. I received an email yesterday. Maybe some of you got the notice as well. Catholic Charities of San Antonio has contacted LCWR, and they are seeking immediate volunteers. So they've asked for sisters, but of course in Loretto, we know that includes us as well, we co-members. They've asked for anyone who could come to San Antonio and help with the huge influx of work that the Catholic Charities is dealing with, not just migrants from the Del Rio area and elsewhere, but Afghan refugees who are being resettled in San Antonio. Catholic Charities has said they will cover costs to travel to San Antonio. They will cover lodging in San Antonio. They just need a lot of help.
Great, thank you.
And I'll just say, I'm kind of thinking about doing it myself. So if anybody else is pulled to this, let me know.
Luta continua. The struggle continues. Thank you so much, Sally. Thank you very much. And let's close with the reflection, Maureen.
Yeah, I want to say goodbye to Dulce. She has another Zoom. Thank you so much. And I want to welcome my friend Melanie. She's a storyteller from Denver. And Melanie, I believe you focus a lot on Native Americans, which might be pertinent to talking about dreamers. I was looking up prayers for dreamers, and actually I came across this statement about people having vivid dreams during COVID because of our lack of stimulation in our environments. And so I thought that was interesting. So hopefully during this past year and a half, those of us with the privilege to do so have taken time to think through new visions for what we hope for our future and for what the world will be. As we envision, dream what this new normal post-pandemic will be, let us offer this prayer for all dreamers. Spirit of life, God of many names, we are thankful for the strength needed to make it through this year, in spite of all the barriers caused by the COVID virus. We will never forget and hold in our hearts all those affected by great losses. Just as Joseph in the book of Genesis was visited with understanding and visions in his dreams, which gave him the courage to save his people, we also ask to be blessed with dreams and visions that redefine our destiny. Help us to see our work in the midst of these challenging times. Let us pray for a vision where all humanity walks in solidarity with each other. Let us tear down walls, build beloved community, and live as one with all creation. May we be blessed with sweet heavenly dreams of such a new day. Amen and blessed be.
Amen. Thank you so much, Maureen. And thank you everyone for joining us today. This concludes our program. Take care. Thank you. Thanks so much.